Hey guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at Astral Chain. Now I am very sorry for a bit of a late review. I guess we are a few days late, but I do like to play the games as much as possible, and I have now racked over about 100 hours on this game. So you can kind of tell just by me mentioning that I have played this game for 100 hours that I'm mostly going to be positive about it, and obviously I do like this game, but there are a lot of things that I would like to discuss, obviously including some flaws. So Astral Chain is developed by Platinum Games and published by Nintendo. This is a third-person action RPG. Now in Astral Chain you play as a special neuron officer in the police force that basically has the objective of taking out the otherworldly kind of chimeras, but also have the ability to capture the chimeras and use them as companions themselves. Now things get quite a lot more complicated and complex and weird in general, but that's really all I'm going to mention about the story, just to not spoil anything at all. But I would go ahead and say that the story is a good story, and it does play obviously a massive part in this game. Now Astral Chain isn't exactly an open world game, but it kind of does feel like it sometimes, since you can freely go back to any of the chapters or files as they're called in this game and explore anytime after you finish it. And obviously you'll never need to go back to a previous chapter, but it's always a good idea to go back every now and then, since there is tiny little Metroidvania somewhat element in this game, since each legion you capture, which are kind of like these companions you can capture, they'll each have their own type of abilities, and it's always good to go back. Even though the story never makes you go back and chapter select, you definitely should, to pick up new items and just do new side quests whenever you get a new legion. And I just want to mention before we do stop talking about exploration, just like any other RPG, though this is a lot more of a linear kind of game as far as story goes because it is divided into chapters, a big part of this game is to go back and do all the side quests and explore every single level. Now for the battle system, which is possibly the most important thing in most Platinum games, and similar to most of them games, it's a bit of a hack and slash with some RPG elements. Now what makes this game's combat system so good, at least compared to a lot of the other games or similar games, is the combo system. So basically you have three types of main weapons. You have kind of like this normal fast hitting platoon, you have a heavy attack which is like a greatsword, and you also have a gun. And though you do not really find any other weapons in the game, and you basically have all of them from the start, but the good thing is that you will find new legions and companions, and each one of these has different play styles. So let's just say that you maybe summon the Beast Legion, which is kind of like this dog. That will have a different combo set with, like, say if you're wielding the gun, than if you was wielding the gun and the Axe Legion, which is more of a defensive one. So combining these 5 legions with the 3 weapons, there is a big bunch of combos that you can actually perform. And apart from this, each legion has their own skill trees where you can learn different skills and combos. It will also allow you to put passive abilities on them, which you'll find around the game. And if you're really good and put your time into it and maybe go for a bit of training, you can do things like maybe unchain one of the legions, so that will finish its combo as you summon another legion and start comboing with that one. And it's actually all quite spectacular to see. And the combos are pretty much infinite. Though at the same time, I would like to mention that none of this really matters and really won't be necessary unless you are playing on maybe the very hardest difficulty or doing some of the post-game missions, which are definitely the hardest part. Now, the combat being the biggest part of this game, this is actually obviously where I see most of the flaws in this game as well. Now, once you finish the game, you'll get a load of cases which are kind of like post-game content, and they're quite fun. There's a lot of post-game content, But this is where there's a massive difficulty spike in some of these cases, or in quite a lot of them. And I'm all for difficulty because most RPGs or games in general, post-game is normally quite difficulty. But the difficulty spike in this game is quite ridiculous. And I don't really mind, I kind of enjoy the difficulty. But some of the difficulty is a bit artificial in this game. In what actually makes it difficult is sometimes enemies that just have like a ridiculous one-hit attack. And this isn't like the type of game where you really predict an enemy being able to do this. Some of the enemies have incredibly fast attacks, especially when you're surrounded with 20 other enemies. You can't focus on all of them. And maybe let's just say the camera angles aren't the best on this game, and sometimes this massive enemy will just come out of the middle of nowhere and just insta-kill you. And like even at max level. And sometimes apart from this, you get like these ridiculous battles where it's like 20 enemies around you just stun locking you, burning you. And if that wasn't enough, sometimes there's like sticky puddles in the map where it just paralyzes you, or fire on the map that can just insta kill you. And especially like these arena hazards, let's just call them, sometimes it's a bit annoying, since this is the type of game where if you're maybe running and the enemy's quite far away, it will auto kind of dash towards him or dash around him, or the attack will kind of like auto go towards that enemy. And sometimes it's not the best game to control like exactly where your character goes, especially when you're in the heat of battle, and sometimes you just touch it, you're pretty much dead. And I'm not going to say the hitboxes are really bad, but sometimes some of the attacks, the hitboxes aren't the best I've ever seen, let's just say. Another kind of little issue, especially with like some of the harder post-game cases, is that sometimes in this game there's enemies that get shielded by other enemies, and you have to kill the little enemy that's shielding the big enemy to kill the big enemy. And sometimes when there's like 15 enemies on the screen, it's very, very hard to lock on to the exact enemy you want to lock on. And because they're so strong at this point in the game, sometimes by the time you end up locking on to the only mortal enemy on the screen, you're pretty much dead by the rest of them. This kind of is a bit of a nitpick, especially because it's just mainly post-game, and during the main game you're probably not even going to notice this. But I'm just trying to pick out some of the flaws, because if it wasn't for any of these flaws, the game's pretty much perfect. Now, something I did really like about this game is the actual customization. Not only with like the high number and sometimes hilarious costumes and equipment that you can put on the protagonist, but also being able to change stuff like the color and stuff to each of your legions, I think is pretty cool. And like I said, the outfits of the actual main character, they're really distinct. You can change the color of pretty much everything, so there is a lot of customization in this game, and that's definitely one of the high points. The anime style graphics look absolutely amazing, considering this is a Switch exclusive game, and sometimes there are a lot of enemies and effects on the screen at the same time, and the performance really doesn't get affected that much. Maybe every now and then it'll go down to like 25 FPS instead of like 30, but nothing that's going to ruin the game or barely even noticeable. The soundtrack, I absolutely love it. It's very similar to the style on Nier Automata, which is actually one of the games with my favorite soundtrack of all time. And yeah, very similar to that. Also, I want to point out that every character has a voice, or pretty much every important character has a voice, so you won't have to read it all that much. And it's all dubbed to English, which is really good as well. And yeah, despite what I said about the little flaws in the post-game combat or in the hardest difficulty, in my opinion, this is a must-have game if you own a Switch. So from me, it's a 9 out of 10. And yeah, guys, this is now available for the Nintendo Switch. Hopefully this review is helpful. If it was, please go like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, guys. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please consider supporting me over on Patreon. This will allow me to get more games and produce more videos. Thanks ever so much for the support. Take care, guys.